became a millionaire at 12. To expect everybody to have become a millionaire at 12 and learn money management and have a business manager at 12, to me just seems not realistic.
Right.
I started working 10, 15 years before most of my generation had their first job. And
Right.
this is like most, obviously some people different. But no, I don't hold people to those standards. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like I feel like if I wanted somebody that made as much as me, this would be a date and not an interview. Because okay. So I feel like when it comes to guys our age, every now and then you might find somebody that's out there making it. But most of the time they're gonna be, my mom and dad, they went 50-50 all my life.
Right.
So when I hear some of the stuff that people are saying, you know what I'm saying, about relationships and dating, I'm just kind of like, I don't know how that's gonna work, but maybe I'm tripping.
But how about this? Maybe the guy that makes as much as you, more than you, you're not interested in.
Or is not interested in me. You know, it goes both ways.
Yes.
When you're basing things, I think, off of just totally financial or totally off of good looks
Right.
or totally off of whatever.
Right.
Your list becomes smaller and smaller and
Correct.
smaller and
Yes,
smaller.
yes.
And I also think, hey, you should have boundaries and limits. You can't, I'm too open. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You
Right.
might find yourself with John Joe that live on the corner.
Right.
You know, so there has to be some leeway just as much as there has to be some twiddling it down.
Right.
But I don't necessarily agree with, you know, again, for everybody's lifestyle.
Right.
I don't need you to pay for everything for me. I actually prefer you to not to. I'll let you know when I would like for you to
Right.
spend something.
We go half on something?
We can go half on something possibly, you know, but I feel really like there's so much more that I would be looking forward to bring to the table than just what's in your pockets. I would look for you to provide things that I can't provide for myself.
I think the thing is, for a man, looks are great, education is great, body, sex, whatever the female brings to the table, woman brings to the table.
Yeah.
What about peace? Can you bring a man peace? Because at the end of the day, if you don't bring him, no matter, at some point in time, it'll get so chaotic.
I mean, I'm going to be real with you.
That's what I want
It
you to do.
depends on the day of the week. I don't know if I bring somebody peace all the time.
God,
You know, but I get, because who can? Come the hell on. Nobody is bringing nobody. You know, I'm being real. I'm somebody you could trust.
Okay.
Because sometimes I might be too much.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But at least I have some business to head to.
Yeah.
You know, when I get on your nerves.
Right,
So
okay.
I think, you know, I'm realistic with what I expect.
Okay.
From people,
Yes.
from men and women.
Okay.
People gonna get on your nerves. And I use my parents as that example.
Right.
You don't get to 30 plus years without getting on somebody's nerves, without disappointing somebody, without
Yeah.
hurting somebody's feeling, without growing through something,
Right.
forgiving, loving, having compassion, understanding, and arriving at the place where you could say, huh, I really love you.
Right. Kiki, when you have a disagreement, I remember the therapist told me this was like 30 years ago. She said, Shannon, are you arguing to be right or are you arguing for right?
I'm arguing with us against the problem. But I have argued to be right.
Ah, come on, you know.
Yeah.
You can
I
be
have.
right and lose a relationship, though.
Yes, you can. You can. That's how you've learned.
Yes. Yes.
That's how you've learned. I've definitely argued to be right, but then I learned that, okay, wait a minute. And I talk about this in my book too, where
We're gonna get
it's
to
a
that.
conversation
Yes,
though.
yes.
It's a conversation that you have with yourself, right? Where you're like, oh, wait a minute. In order to be a we, I have to really act like a we.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you found yourself in relationships where you're still acting like a me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to ask yourself, do I even want to be a we? That's a real question
that
these
is,
days.
absolutely.
Do I really, and not even, I won't even say these days, all the time. But I think that obviously we're in a different place financially where some, you know, back in the day, women couldn't even stand on their own. But now that people, you know, can more often than not equally stand on their own, you're asking the question of, do I want to consider someone else? And I 100% do believe there is autonomy in deciding to commit yourself. I was having this conversation with my homegirl. We were talking about how, like, you know what, girl, I think I actually have been quite non-committal. And let me put it like this. A lot of people see non-committal and they think about guys. They want to have a bunch of options and da-da-da-da. Okay, well, no, I'm not non-committal in the sense where I wanted to have a bunch of options, but I knew that I did. And I had no patience for anyone that didn't fit in this little tiny box that I created for them.
Right.
And that's when I realized for myself, oh my gosh, that is also a version of being non-committal, because you're just not trying to commit to the realization that, girl, somebody's gonna get on your nerves.
Exactly.
You know, if you just keep trading everybody out, or you keep just moving on, or you cutting yourself off, then you're never gonna get to what ultimately commitment is, which is really loving and caring for somebody for being who they are and all that comes with that. And, again, I think it's a choice. It's okay to not want that. But I don't think that in order to have that, you have to lose yourself.
Right.
Because it's you that has decided to give yourself to that.
Right.
But it's a lot that goes into it.
Well, the quickest way, if you want to find out if you want to be a we, get into a disagreement with your partner. That's the surest and quickest way to find out if you want to be me or you want to be we.
What has been your experience with that? I'm not sure of all your, if you've been married or if you are married.
I have not.
So you feel like you never found nobody that you felt like you wanted to get past that argument with?
No.
Damn, that was quick.
No, it wasn't that. That's what. No, I didn't. I meant that, like, the only thing I've ever wanted to do was get my family out of the situation that we were in. And I always said if I had kids, I didn't want them to spend 1 minute in a life that I had, let alone a day. And so I was so focused on that. And sacrifice, I understood the greater the greater the goal, the greater the sacrifice needed to achieve that goal. And so I missed out. Yeah, I think one of my biggest regrets is that everything that I've accomplished professionally, as being football or doing it now, that I really haven't had a whole lot of people to share it with.
But you're so handsome and still young and vibing. Why is it over now?
It ain't over.
I know that's right.
It ain't over. It ain't over. I just get started.
But I do get what you mean. It can feel like time has passed you by.
Yeah.
It can, but it hasn't.
It had.
But it does. It can feel like that.
Okay. I still got hope.